Universidad del Valle de Guatemala. Excelencia que trasciende.
Buenas tardes. Okay. I will conduct this lecture in English only, so hopefully that will be fine. Well, first of all, thank you all for allowing me to come and talk and share some of the thoughts that I have about innovation in engineering and quality assurance and accreditation and ABET. I have many responsibilities in my current position, but by far the most enjoyable opportunity is to come and speak with people about my favorite topic, which is developing the engineers of the future and the technical professionals of tomorrow, because truly, in order to solve all the big problems that we have in the world, many of those responsibilities are going to be right there with the graduates of tomorrow. So with that, let me give you a brief outline of some of the things that I'd like to talk about. First of all, what is the importance of engineering education and how is ABET involved in helping promote innovation and again, developing these professionals of tomorrow. I think it's important for me to share with you the importance of quality assurance and accreditation, because many times people will ask, why should you care about accreditation and why should you care about quality assurance in higher education? I think it's really important for everyone here to understand what the benefits are, and I think that's really the foundation for what I'll talk about. I'd like to talk about ABET because I think ABET is a unique organization. ABET has been in business for 80 years and has been really focused on helping ensure that students have the very best possible educational experience. However, there's a lot of misinformation and people quite don't understand maybe the important aspects of who we are as an organization and how we operate. So please allow me to spend some time talking about that. And then finally, well, actually two last things. We went through a very fundamental change in how we view success of programs in educating students. We had before we transition to what we call outcomes-based accreditation, we had a very fundamental, very sort of a crude way of doing that. And I think that we're in a better place now, and I think I'd like to share with you what those aspects look like. And then finally talk about our global engagement, because one of the opportunities and one of the really the mission areas of ABET is to help improve technical education on a global basis. So me being here and talking with you helps fulfill that mission, because there are many students in here that are going to be successful professional engineers or computer scientists or whatnot, and understanding how ABET is involved internationally, I think, is an important aspect of that. So, the first thing I'd like to talk about is the professions of tomorrow, because I was educated some 30 years ago in electrical engineering, and I can tell you for a fact that that profession has changed significantly in that amount of time, as you can imagine. I think that it's important for us to kind of look into the future as best we can to help prepare students to practice. And so if you look at the many global challenges in the world today, there are many of them. I have three more slides talking about global challenges. And so you can pick one and you can see where we all have to work together as a global society to help fix these. You know, the environment, obviously, there's many challenges in the environment. Me being in the United States, you know, we can make an impact, but there are many other parts of the world that also have an impact. Obviously, world population, the stress that we put on our planet is important. Figure out ways to help make that work. Clean water, obviously, you know, many areas of conflict. Aging population, I know in the U.S. is a real issue, and you know, this what we call baby boom generation is now coming into retirement and so forth, and so it's really putting a lot of stress on resources and so forth in the U.S. And then obviously energy is another important aspect. Now, our National Academy of Engineering in the United States has outlined 14, what they call 14 grand challenges that have been agreed upon as areas of focus. And along with these areas of focus, they want to apply funds, research, focus people's energies and so forth, and looking at ways to really help fix some of these many challenges. First, making solar energy economical and more efficient. Solar energy is, as you can imagine, the sun is a great source of energy, and it provides energy and life in so many different ways, but how can we make it more efficient and more economical? Manage the nitrogen cycle, obviously with our planet and the stresses that we put under it with all the pollutants and so forth, having ways of improving the air quality is important. Health informatics is one that is more and more important all the time. Again, aging population, preventing nuclear war, that's something I think everyone can agree upon is a really important one and one that we'd like to help solve. Personalized learning, that's an area that we get involved in quite a bit, and the educational environment is changing drastically. It seems every year there are new ways and new innovative ways that are being proposed to help educate individuals, not just in those in college, but certainly those that have been out in the workforce and trying to adapt to new skills, and how do we optimize their learning ability? People learn in different ways, and how can we advance that? Providing access to clean water, obviously another an area that's important. Energy from fusion, that would be a really good solution to many of our energy problems, developing better medicines, and we can go through these cybersecurity, carbon sequestration due to all the pollution and so forth, and improving our infrastructures. Reverse engineering the brain is one that I think that, I have a son who's involved in biomedical engineering, and this is an area that's garnered a lot of attention recently, and we've made great strides in doing that. But if we can figure out thought processes and how to do that from a scientific point of view, that would be quite amazing. And then finally, enhancing virtual reality. And virtual reality is one of those really interesting areas that is used in all kinds of different areas now, from practicing surgeries to improving all aspects of quality of life. And so those are our big challenges. And so if you threw those out there and said, okay, how can we really attack these kind of problems, and what role would an organization like ABET play in that? I think there's some significant ways. The challenges are immense for the future, the professions of the future. You can imagine, just based on those grand challenges, what those might be. But the big thing is that all these problems are interrelated and they're all systematic. So you can't just take a single problem and expect to attack it solely. Okay, because there are always many variables and many aspects that are involved. The multidisciplinary systems approach is one that you probably are aware of. Really, there are no single engineering problems anymore that single engineers can work. They have to work on a team. Many problems involve people from all aspects, whether it's engineers working with psychologists or medical professionals or whatnot. Many disciplines are required to solve many of the bigger problems. Interaction with lots of people that are not necessarily technically astute. And I know that for a fact that many of the biggest challenges that we face, again, require disciplines that go from a wide spectrum, from those that are centered on scientific and engineering to those that might have social issues to business and so forth. So being able to communicate and getting the general public especially to be aware of these technical issues and how they can help and solve them is a real challenge. Globalization, one of the reasons I'm here today is to talk about global education. That's something that's well, I think, understood in terms of making sure that people are prepared to work anywhere in the world with individuals from all over the world. And also that there's this I think, challenge that many people think that technology will solve all our problems. And so there's maybe an attitude that if we give it enough time and we provide enough money, there'll be technical solutions. That's not always the case, but certainly we play an important part. What I would like to talk about, and what I think is important, is this educational experience. And this is the critical aspect of helping us solve these, these grand challenges and preparing these students for tomorrow. Because at the end of the day, what's really important is what your grounding and fundamentals are. I know as an electrical engineering student, many of the technologies that I learned when I was an undergraduate have evolved and changed, and maybe necessarily aren't even practiced anymore. But I can tell you that the fundamentals don't change, okay? And in terms of learning about the theory of electromagnetism, for example, those things don't change. The technologies change, but the fundamentals don't change. So it's very important for people to be well grounded in the fundamentals. If you're well grounded in the fundamentals, then you can learn what the new technologies are, and you can adapt. You need to be exposed to innovation at all aspects of your educational experience. And this is something that maybe you don't take for, you wouldn't necessarily take for granted, but there are many people throughout the academic world feel that the more innovation and the more that project-based and experiential learning is integrated into your learning experience from an early age, then it becomes just a way that you conduct yourselves, and it's a natural a way of learning. And so certainly exposure to that is important. And then the biggest aspect, I think, is the quality of education. You have to have a good quality education, and especially now with the proliferation of different sources of education, whether it's online or different types of residential sort of learning, quality is important, and that's where ABET really comes into play. So what I wanted to do is sell you a little bit on the value of accreditation, and you may know about accreditation, you may have heard it and used in different ways, but really what it does is it demonstrates that colleges are providing students, a sort of a minimum set of standards to prepare them to practice in whatever profession that is, okay? And where ABET comes into play and where we feel very strong and very proud is the fact that our professions are the ones that help develop that, okay? This is not a government organization that is determining what you should be learning. These are your peers, your professional peers practicing in the future that are determining what is important for you to learn. Okay, if you're a student, so I know there are students here, why would you care about accreditation and what difference would it make to you? Well, certainly I think in the forefront it helps you select quality programs. If you have a choice of going to a program that has been reviewed and is committed to quality, that is a program that you would probably want to seek and to participate in. If you find them that have not been accredited or not committed to quality, obviously that's not one that you want to do. And most importantly, it shows that the institution's committed to quality. And quality is not something that you turn on and you turn off. Quality is something that's embedded in the culture, it's embedded in the processes at the institutions, and it's a commitment from the institution from the highest level, from the rector on down to the faculty, that it will be practiced in all aspects of the educational experience for the students. It will help you prepare for the profession because accredited programs are recognized by the profession as being quality. So you have a good chance of being hired by a good reputable corporation, for example, because they realize the value of accreditation. It will enhance your employment opportunities in that regard. To industry, ABET, our biggest customer, is really industry, because industry hires all those students that come out of those technical programs. So they have a very keen interest in making sure that we're doing a good job of what we do. And what does that mean? That means you're ready to enter the profession. So if they want to hire a chemical engineer or an environmental engineer, they want to be able to know that those students have certain level of expertise, they have certain knowledge, and they have certain experiences. And so we help them do that. I can tell you for a fact that many industries will only hire from accredited programs. And to prove this point, if you go to the ABET website, abet.org, and there is a tab that talks about exploring the possibilities, if you click on that, it will list all the jobs that are currently being advertised on the entire internet that require you graduate from a graduate from an ABET accredited program. So it runs in the many thousands of jobs, and you'll notice many of those corporations, you'll notice them right away who they are. And so that, to me, that's a big indication of their support and the importance. It helps you with the mobility, and that's becoming more and more important on a global scale. I don't know how many of you are interested in international type of careers, but I can tell you that the technical professions, specifically in engineering, is probably one of the most global type of professions that you'll encounter, because the technical problems are common throughout the world. There are multinational teams working on all kinds of interesting problems, and so as a result, they want to make sure they can hire people from different parts of the world and that they'll have the talents that they expect. And it helps industry guide the educational process, because industry's talking to the programs all the time saying what's important, all right? And so if industry's providing that information to the institutions are considering that as they develop the criteria, they're developing their programs, then certainly the students are going to benefit from that as well, because they're going to know what, are going to have exposure to what are the latest concerns. Okay, value to the institution. So what would be the value to this institution? It's a third-party confirmation. We would be the third-party confirmation saying that, yes, you have quality programs. It provides you some international status. And in respect to ABET, there are many institutions that seek accreditation from one accreditor or another. Our experience with ABET is it provides them some recognized international recognition of this commitment to quality. It helps them attract the best students. the students out there, and as well as the faculty, and it also helps with transfer of credits and those types of things. And then in many cases, especially in the US, external funding often depends on accreditation because foundations and corporations and others don't want to invest money in programs if they don't think they have a commitment to quality, because again, they want to make sure that the students are receiving the best possible education. In terms of faculty benefit from accreditation and quality assurance because they know that they're encouraged to practice what we call best practices in education, and then there's a real commitment and focus to students and student learning. Okay? There are many very large research-based institutions in the world, and many in the United States that are focused on research, and students are something that they have to deal with, okay? Educating students sometimes are something that they have to deal with. But through the process of accreditation and quality assurance, there really is a commitment to making sure students are provided that best opportunity. It provides the quality assurance so that programs can identify problems and fix them. We know that. We know that the students the institution's serious about improving quality. And if I'm a faculty member and I am looking to go to an institution, I want to know that that institution is committed to quality. And so you'll find that to be a true source, especially when it comes to facilities and financial resources, making sure students have the best equipment and laboratories and all those kinds of things. Okay, what I'd like to do though is just take a few minutes and talk about ABET. ABET, as you heard earlier, used to be the Accreditation Board for Engineering and Technology, and we've changed that a bit, primarily because we do more than engineering. We are involved in the computer sciences and applied sciences, so we accredit lots of different programs. So we generally go by ABET, but Accreditation Board for Engineering and Technology is okay. The first thing to know is that we're not-for-profit and we're non-governmental, so we don't report to the Board of Education in the US or any other like body. So we're independent, which is important because it allows us to not be necessarily unduly influenced by the government. Okay? And in our business, that we find that to be a very important aspect of who we are. We're not for profit. We don't have shareholders directing that we do certain things, so we don't have to make choices based on money. We don't accredit institutions, degrees, or courses, only programs. So specific chemical engineering, electrical engineering, computer science, and so forth. We do that at different levels: associate, 2-year, baccalaureate, 4-year, and a master's, which would be that 5th year of school. And the reason that we're involved in those different areas is because it depends on when you enter the profession. So if you enter the profession as a technician after 2 years, we want to make sure that you go out there with a quality education. You're ready to be a technician. We would accredit at the 2-year. Most of the programs are at 4 years. Some are at the 5th year. We want to make sure the programs are relevant and they're technically strong and you have these professional skills. And this is something I'll talk about here shortly. And this is especially important in the global environment, okay? For the global engineer, the engineer that wants to be able to work on different multicultural teams, multinational teams, work in different parts of the world. The technical skills are obviously important. The professional skills are critically and in many cases equally as important. Peer review, this goes to this is our heritage, but it also goes to the legitimacy of the type of individuals that we have working for ABET. If we accredit a chemical engineering program, only a chemical engineer will visit. If we do a computer science program, only a computer scientist will visit. Because the faculty at that institution that's being reviewed, we want to provide the best value to them. Okay? And the best way to do that is to get someone who understands their academic discipline to work with them. So peer review is important. I'll talk about the volunteers here in just a moment. And I don't want to go away today without emphasizing that the focus is always on quality and quality assurance. Accreditation is important, but accreditation is just a small piece of the commitment to quality. Okay? If a program is committed to quality, and they have a system in place, they are following it, and they are ensuring the graduates are ready, then the accreditation part is very easy. Okay, it's just a byproduct, if you will, of the quality process. So I want to make sure that people understand that our focus is on quality, where quality assurance accreditation is somewhat secondary. Okay, so what our mission is we serve the public because we want to make sure that those individuals practicing are prepared and that they're developing solutions to problems that aren't going to hurt the public, the greater public, that they're helping the greater public. Okay, we want to advance all those things in education in these different areas, and I'll talk about what those are, but that's our primary focus. Our vision, we provide world leadership in terms of guidance, and we do a lot of mentoring, and we have formal partnerships with other accrediting bodies and so forth. And so we feel that we have a role in terms of providing leadership, assuring quality, and stimulating innovation. And these are the 4 areas. And if you notice, there's nothing about accreditation in this vision. It doesn't say accreditation, right? It talks about all those other aspects of what I feel are important. I mentioned these: applied sciences, computing, engineering, and engineering technology. Our heritage is in engineering and engineering technology. There are many, there are thousands of programs in these areas. Computing is a newer area, and then the applied sciences is a smaller area of programs that you accredit, like health physics and occupational safety and health, and some things that are not directly related to engineering, but the technical professions want those programs accredited. This is a slide that shows the professional societies that make up ABET. ABET is an organization, or it's a federation of other societies, so our members are these organizations, and depending upon your particular discipline, you may recognize some of these logos here, but these 33 societies are the ones that provide the volunteers that do all the work for ABET, that do review the programs, and the societies are the ones that help with the criteria. I would point out 2 of particular interest. Our newest society is this one here. This is on construction management. So construction management is not engineering per se, but it is management of construction programs, and as the name implies. So that's the newest one. And then SWE is the Women Engineers Society. And in the US and in many other places, there is a concerted effort to try to encourage more women to seek engineering as a career, and we feel that by having the Society of Women Engineers involved, that helps promote the profession of engineering to that particular group. So that's who they are. In total, over 1.5 million individuals, so we have a large pool to choose from. In terms of our volunteers, they develop the criteria. These are the things of which, the standards of which the programs are reviewed. They provide volunteers, over 2,000 volunteers that ABET uses to visit the various programs and review the materials, talk with students and faculty and so forth. They make up our board of directors. And again, I mentioned about the volunteers that do the reviews and so forth. So they're the ones that provide all those volunteers to us. We don't pay the volunteers. The name in volunteer implies there's no stipend, and that's true. And I think one of the most powerful aspects of this is we have over 2,000 volunteers. Many of them have been working many years for ABET. And I think that underscores the importance that they place on what they do. They help the profession. They want to make sure that the future students, graduates, are ready to contribute. And so they're very dedicated in that way. And I think, again, that is a very important aspect of our culture. This is what it involves. If a program wants to apply for accreditation status, they submit what we call a readiness review to make sure that they're accreditable. Then they do a self-study, which is a self-review of the program. That's a very powerful tool because it allows them to examine themselves and determine what's strong about the program, maybe what's not strong about the program. And that in itself is of value because it allows the program, excuse me, to identify those areas that need improvement. They write this for the evaluator and the team chair. The team comes to the campus and they look at the self-study and they conduct an on-site visit and they talk to faculty and students about their experiences in the program. There are some follow-on activities potentially that a program needs to take care of, but generally those are minimal. Okay, what I wanted to show here is just the outline of what's involved, and I'll just go through this. There's lots of things involved. But typically it's 1.5 years it takes to go through this whole process. You would apply for accreditation, if you will, and then the institution does a lot of work preparing self-studies. The team members look at that, they come and visit, and then there's this quality check that we have that results in ultimately, let me see, where are we here, August, October, ultimately stating the status of the accreditation for that institution. So there's lots of things involved on our part, and there's lots of things involved on the institution's part. Outcomes-based accreditation is the means that we have for ensuring that programs are preparing students well. Before, we used to dictate everything that was required. We would tell them how many credit hours of each discipline, of each sort of course to take, whether it's mathematics, science, engineering, and so forth. We don't do that anymore. Okay, we determined that, hey, it's not working very well. Industry especially was receiving graduates that they didn't feel were very well prepared. They were missing some critical skills, and you couldn't necessarily determine if students were learning. I can tell you for a fact that in many cases, students can perform well on examinations, for example. They can memorize, perhaps, and they can work towards solving specific types of problems. They may do well on exams, but they ultimately are not prepared to deal with problems that are not familiar to them. And so there was no way for many to understand whether this was happening or not. So again, changing to this different approach, we wanted to make sure that they were ready to enter face the challenges of tomorrow again, technical and professional skills, and more importantly, how do we understand whether students are learning? Okay, so Engineering Criteria 2000 came along, and it was a dramatic change. It was adopted in 1997, and it was a pretty significant effort by many, many people. But the whole idea was to look at what are students learning versus what are they taught. It's easy to determine what students are taught. You can go to a course catalog and look at all the requirements and say students will go through all these courses, and then they'll graduate, and then they'll be an engineer of some type. But the question is how do you know if they're learning? And professional educators, this is a great challenge. How do we know if students are learning? All right. And so what we wanted to do is determine if it's possible for us to do this, and determine how that fits the criteria. So we defined objectives that meet the needs of the constituents. So programs would define what those are, and then they go through the assessment process and demonstrate through evidence that students are learning. Okay. This is really difficult to do in many cases. Okay, because again, you can't look at test scores alone. Test scores are an indication perhaps, but there are other aspects of students learning in terms of their experiences and the things that they do that help you determine whether or not students are learning well. So what we wanted to do is make sure that the science and the technical aspects of our prior criteria were maintained, but we wanted to emphasize these professional skills. And again, I wanted to share with you how this really does affect the global engineer and the engineer in so many different parts of the world. We also want this outcome-based accreditation to allow for innovation and program uniqueness. One of the strengths of the educational system in the United States, it's very diverse. We have very large research institutions, and we have small colleges, we have teaching colleges, we have faith-based organizations. They're all different, but they can all be accredited, and they all have different focus areas in terms of who their customers are. So we want to allow for all of that to happen. Again, the focus is always on quality, so I want to make sure that's on there. The continuous improvement is one of the criteria. Programs have to demonstrate they have a continuous improvement process in place in order to be successful. There is a report that was published by Penn State University. There was a study that was conducted over 3 years called Engineering Change, and it was it looked at two different classes, 2004 versus 1994, and compared the two in terms of what are students learning, and are they doing, is this EC 2000 beneficial? They wanted to know, are they better prepared, and are we stimulating innovation? And the answers are, well, first of all, you can find the study. You can download that if you want. But the primary findings that the curricula had changed. That would be no necessarily a surprise, because in order to meet the criteria, different things would have to be taught in some areas. There's more emphasis on the professional skills. Again, that would be a surprise, and that's a good thing. They were gained, so students were learning and had better exposure to them. The technical skills were still there, but the professional skills were enhanced, which is exactly what we wanted. Okay, are we stimulating innovation? Nobody knows. There was no result that could be produced by this study that said yes, we removed from barriers, but most of the programs hadn't responded as quickly as possible. Okay? My personal belief is that this study happened too early, because there wasn't enough time for these things to kind of propagate through the programs, but there was some pressure from some educational organizations to look at and see, is this really going to work? And one of the reasons is because this approach now is used universally through the United States at all the accrediting agencies and throughout the world now. So outcomes-based assessment, outcomes-based accreditation is universally accepted, okay? And you'll find that in all parts of the world. Now, it's not all due to ABET, but it has a lot to do with ABET, because we were one of the very early adopters of this approach. So I believe that this kind of study would be good maybe now, because we've had some time to let this work and see if it really does making a difference, okay? I am one person that has to go out and tell programs innovation is important. ABET won't get in your way. You're not going to lose your accredited status if you try something different, okay? If you meet the criteria, you meet the criteria. So we want to encourage as much of that as possible. The nice thing is it focused more attention on teaching, and many schools now, because of the commitment to teaching and so forth, have introduced awards for faculty that are excellent teachers to highlight that. That hadn't happened before, and so that was a very nice aspect of it. And you'll find that faculty administration has really made a more explicit commitment to teaching and to improving the educational experience that probably didn't exist before. And so that, I think, is in itself is a really good aspect. The self-examination is equally as important. You can go along and teach and never ask this kind of questions like, why am I doing this? Why am I asking the students to go through this particular experience or do this exercise? Why are we doing it, and what effect is it having? What kind of graduates are we producing? The kind that we want, or the kind that our customers want, industry? And who are the people that we're really trying to reach, and what do they need, okay? And this type of activity absolutely happens as a result of this kind of approach, and it's all positive. Many times now, the continuous improvement is just integrated into how you do business, and it's exactly what you want, okay? And no one will quibble with the fact that you're making a commitment to quality. That's what most everyone is in favor of doing, okay? We want to make the criteria non-prescriptive. It is. I know what I wanted to say about this. How are we promoting innovation? That's it. So our biggest way of doing that is by making our criteria non-prescriptive. So it doesn't tell you exactly what you need to do in terms of how you need to teach, or how you need to present material, or what experiences students need to have. We provide general guidance, and then it's up to the institution to determine how that looks. We have a symposium every year, and it's happening this April. We have academic experts from multiple institutions provide examples of innovative practices. That's really an important thing to do because hearing from your peers how that happens is very effective, more effective than listening to me for sure. We have industry panels on innovation, so industry can say, hey, this is what we need, this is the kind of things that we want to see out of our graduates of tomorrow, okay? ASEE, that's the American Society for Engineering Education. They're the largest organization that's focused just on engineering education. Every year in June, they host a conference, and they consistently have panels on innovation and ABET in terms of how programs are implementing different types of learning experiences and so forth in the classroom and elsewhere. And that helps spread the message. And then we oftentimes, our program evaluators will go into programs, and they'll be very impressed, or they'll be quite amazed at maybe some of the things that they're doing in those institutions, and they bring those back, and we oftentimes will advertise or promote the kind of things that are happening there, either through our symposium or other opportunities to help basically share good practices. But we need to do more. So that's that. Again, I mentioned that it's universally adopted almost throughout the world. We belong to some mutual recognition agreements. I'll talk about those in just a moment, but it's the basis for that. And so let me talk about how we're involved in the world. We accredit a lot of programs, over 3,000 programs, and that's a lot of programs because that means there's 3,000 teams that have to go out and look at individual programs at institutions and talk to faculty and talk to students and so forth. 365 of those right now are outside the United States. That's a very large number also. So we provide quality assurance outside the U.S. and in different parts of the world. We also have formal agreements with 16 accrediting bodies, one here in Latin America and Central America in UVGHOY, which is a regional accrediting body. But the idea there is to help us work with them to share information and so forth. In many cases, we're helping them mature and to improve their own processes. We also are members of what we call these mutual recognition agreements, and these are agreements that you recognize the substantial equivalency between two accrediting bodies. So, for example, Engineers Canada was the first one that we had this agreement with, and that provides lots of mobility. So if we have engineers educated in Canada that are accredited by Engineers Canada, those programs, they can come to the United States and work, and we can do the same thing, okay? Nowadays, of course, we want to go beyond just Canada. So we have this International Engineering Alliance, which I'll talk about here shortly, 16 nations that have agreed to recognize each other in terms of their QA systems, and then we have one for computing called the Soul Accord. We're also involved in lots of membership organizations throughout the world that are focused on engineering education. The two of the largest, the Global Engineering Deans Council, which is an international organization of engineering deans that gather to talk about the various topics that are common amongst engineering deans throughout the world. Okay. And then this International Federation of Engineering Societies, which is focused again on improving the quality of engineering education worldwide. So the Washington Accord, these are the first nations that signed this agreement to recognize one another, and you'll see them here, and so the US, Australians, Canada, Ireland, and so forth. Since that time, it's grown quite a bit, mostly in Asia. A lot of Asian nations now have accrediting bodies that look very much like ABET, actually, and have had sustainable systems and so forth, and now have been quite successful, and now belong to this accord. The most recent one is the Russian agency, the Accreditation of Engineering Education Russia, which is the newest accrediting body that's joined the Washington Accord. These are the agreed to global graduate attributes. And so this is a very important slide because this is what these nations, these accrediting bodies have agreed to are the most important aspects of a global engineer, okay? And if you look at the top half, you'll see technical disciplines, right? Like you need to be able to solve problems. That seems to be straightforward. You need to be able to design experiments and so forth. But if you look from the top, about the mid one down, it's all about these professional skills. How does the engineer affect society? If I'm designing a solution to a problem, how does it affect the environment? How does it affect people and so forth? So am I always working in an ethical manner? Is an ethics more important than profit, perhaps? Obviously, working on teams is critically important. I mentioned that earlier. Being able to communicate. Okay. If I'm on a multinational team and I'm from the US and I have certain communication modes and so forth, and I'm trying to work with engineers from the Middle East, that could be quite different. So having having emphasis on communications is critical. The project management, finance, and then lifelong learning. And I would tell all the students there that when you graduate, you'll be quite proud of the fact that you've gone through this program, you've learned so much, but that is only the beginning of your learning process. And I can tell you from a personal point of view that the lifelong learning is so critically important, especially in a very fast-paced profession like engineering where the technology changes so rapidly. You have to commit to lifelong learning or you will be left behind quite quickly. And so emphasizing lifelong learning throughout all of these accrediting bodies is a critical aspect. So these are the graduate attributes that really have are going to shape these graduates of tomorrow. Future challenges, there are lots of them. And this is a slide that I can talk to a lot about, but I won't do that because we'll probably press for a little bit of time. But in where I spend most of my time in the U.S., we have a huge number of what we call non-traditional students. So these are students that perhaps have left school for a while, have come back, they are leading families, maybe single parents and so forth. And it's so important now that because non-traditional students exceed the number of traditional students. So there are more non-traditional students in the U.S. than traditional students. So this issue of the global challenge and personalized learning fits this model very well because people come from different backgrounds, have different experiences in and out of school and so forth. So how can we tailor learning to make it most effective? I know that, for example, in the technical professions, there is a shortage of technically competent people in the world, and the demands to solve these grand challenges are only going to expand, and we're going to need more people to do it. The only way you can do that is if you expand the pool of people that are eligible to come into these programs, and many of them are going to be through the non-traditional route. So we need to pay attention to those people and provide them the best opportunity to be successful. That doesn't mean lowering the standards, it means allowing multiple entry points, and there's different ways to do that. Diversity is important, obviously, and I know in a country like the US is becoming more diverse all the time. So all you have to do is look at our government and how our government is changing and the people that are leading our nation, okay? That's only going to increase. Okay, so diversity is important. The globalization, I mentioned that already, but that can't be overemphasized. Globalization is critical to solving problems and making the world a better place, and making us all global citizens. The density of the academic programs, I can tell you for those students there that are out there, you'll have an experience here at the university. They'll graduate And after 5 years, some of the things that you typically would have at a graduate program are now being pushed into the undergraduate. And it amazes me through my own personal experiences how much more students are expected to know and learn now than they did when I was in school. And that's only going to continue because there's so many things to know, and there's so many new tools that allow you to be, to experience things that didn't exist before. And the challenge here is to figure out how to get all that into a 4-year program without expanding it. Students are changing, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z. I know this from firsthand experience. When I was an undergraduate student, PCs did not exist. There were no personal computers. There were certainly no cell phones, no smartphones, no iPads, nothing like that, okay? And so that's had a profound, the internet and so forth had a profound impact on learning, all right? And how students are exposed to that and what their expectations are. And so that leads to the next 2 points, explosion of distance learning, okay? Lots of distance learning going on. Many fine institutions are offering online education. There are some that are questionable, but they're by far the greater number is distance learning is an expectation and something that is going to happen more and more. And again, if we want to educate more people, that's an avenue that's going to help perhaps with this non-traditional student aspect. And then the internet tool of learning is important, but it's also a cautionary tale, okay? And the reason I say that is my son, I have a son who is a junior in college at the university in Maryland, and he's a biomedical engineering student. And when he was a freshman, his professor gave the class an assignment, and the assignment was to go out and find 3 technical papers or references dealing with a particular topic, and the topic had something to do with the some tracheal cells or something. And he called me and said, "Dad, I can only find one source. This professor doesn't know what he's doing. He's giving us a really hard time. I'm never going to finish this assignment." And I asked him, where did he go to look for their sources? And he told me, well, I went to the internet and I Googled this thing, and this is the only source that I got. And I challenged him. I said, why don't you go to the library on campus and see if you can find that? And indeed, he went there and he looked through the journals, and indeed, there were multiple sources. And I think the whole point of that exercise wasn't for him to come up with the resources in itself. The point of that exercise was to point out that while the internet is a very powerful tool, it's not the only tool. Okay? And so you need to make sure that you are prepared, because again, you can't, just because it shows up on the internet certainly doesn't mean it's true, and it doesn't mean that it's the only source of information in the world. And I fall victim to that sometimes myself when I'm looking for a quick answer to a problem, but again, it's a cautionary type of thing. Okay, digital natives, these are the people that were born, what did I say here, 1990s and the 2000s, and I have children that fall into this category. And this is kind of fun because they are lifelong users of all this technology that I never had exposure to, and many of us never had exposure to when we were young. We didn't have exposure until later in life. And you could argue about is this good, is this bad, and so forth, but it doesn't really matter, because ultimately, what happens is, what is the expectation of students, okay? You can use this to your advantage. You can make lectures more engaging, okay? You can use them as tools, different types of tools for learning. I would tell you a quick story also. I went to the Global Engineering Deans Council. I mentioned that group earlier in Chicago, and Notre Dame hosted that conference. And they had the topic was digital learning, basically. And they had 2 people that talked about recent studies that indicated only 5% of lecture material, okay, only 5% of lecture material is actually retained by the students, okay? So when you left that lecture hall or at the end of the semester, only 5% of whatever if you're an instructor, whatever you talked about would be retained on average. So the point of that was, well then, is lecture really an effective way of teaching? Active learning, where students are in the classroom working on teams or doing some kind of activity, is much more effective in reinforcing learning. So many people walked away saying, yeah, we should put all the lectures on YouTube, let students look at them on YouTube, and then we'll use all the class time to do all the experiential learning. And everyone said, yeah, but that wouldn't work very well, because we have all these professors and they like lecturing and so forth, and so I don't think much came from that, but the point is these are powerful tools. Students are very comfortable with technology, so you can use technology in very powerful ways that you wouldn't necessarily you wouldn't expect if you were from maybe not one of these generations. But anyway, it's quite an amazing shift in just not just technology, but about how people think and how they're exposed to different things. So there's a couple other things that I wanted to just chat about here briefly. The global technical professional, and this is someone who can work really anywhere with anyone. You have to have certain competencies, certainly, but I get asked to talk or to participate in panels all the time. There's many organizations that are really committed and very passionate about internationalizing education, and specifically engineering education. And engineering education is really one that can be very challenging because of all the prerequisites of coursework and the very specific order in which you need to be experiencing different courses and so forth. How do you get that international exposure? And exchanges are great, but many times for engineering that's a difficult thing to do because of the way the programs are constructed. So, but there was a strong commitment to doing that. In line with that, there was a recent National Science Foundation and ASEE had a series, the first of 3 series of pretty intense workshops in terms of reaching out to industry and finding out what's important to them. I talked about the feedback from industry into the various programs, and this is another good example. But what they did is you could see the companies that they invited, and they invited 3 different types of managers, the junior people, mid-level type individuals, and senior individuals, and worked on addressing some of the issues of what do we need in engineering graduates of tomorrow, meaning 5 years, 10 years, and so forth. Really tried to brainstorm because obviously it's difficult to find to predict the future. I was involved in that as a facilitator, so I know a lot about it, but you can download this report, this TUEE, Transforming Undergraduate Engineering Education, from the ASEE website, and I think it's very it's worth your time reading, because I think it sheds a lot of light on some of the things that are probably missing in today's education that should be addressed. But it's something that we think about a lot. I wanted to talk about our symposium. We have a symposium every year in April, and we have tracks to talk about different aspects of engineering education. I think the biggest benefit, of this particular event is the fact it's peer conducted, so it's not just ABET talking, rather it's peers exchanging information about accreditation, assessment, innovation, those kinds of things. Self-study room I mentioned only because there's self-studies in there, and then we have workshops also as part of this activity. Right now we have about 85,000 students graduate each year out of ABET accredited programs, and so I feel very strongly and very happy that we have such a profound effect, because all of these programs meet ABET criteria. All of these programs are committed to quality, and all of these students, most importantly, benefit from that. And so with that, I'd like to close. I think I don't have, I have maybe some time for questions.